Okay, for this week's video, I want you to imagine, what does your dream house actually look like? Is it a luxury mansion in Marbella? Is it a cute little apartment in Barcelona? Is it a massive villa with 10 bedrooms and a swimming pool in the Canary Islands? Whatever it is, it starts here with Spanish GCSE success. In this week's video, I'm not only going to teach you how to describe your ideal house using key verbs in the conditional tense, but I'm also going to show you how you can use AI to create an image of what that house might look like. Because while we're here manifesting GCSE Spanish success, we may as well also start manifesting that dream house for the future. You gotta start early, right? ¿Listos? Vámonos. Okay, welcome to week 7, describing your ideal house. So we are sticking with format of the last couple of weeks' videos. So here's our overview. As always, we will start with a new vocab, but then this week we will again go into a brief grammar lesson, this time on the conditional tense, before we move on to the pair translation tasks, which will then help us use the vocab we've learned in real sentences, and we will then use these for our model answer. So again, it's vocab, grammar, and exam practice today. Win, 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 and get your pen and paper ready now if you want them. So here are the keywords that we will be working with today. Pause the video now and see how many you already know. Okay, so las respuestas. Casa or hogar is a house or home. Piso, apartamento, a flat or apartment. Un bloque de pisos is a block of flats. Una casa adosada is a semi-detached or a terraced house. Dormitorio is bedroom. Salón or sala de estar is a living room. La cocina is the kitchen. El comedor, you should be able to see the word comer in there. It's the dining room, the place where you eat. El cuarto de baño, bathroom. Estudio, your study room. El ático or desván, loft or attic. Jardín, garden. Silla, chair. Sillón or butaca, armchair. Muebles, furniture. And un cuadro, una pintura, a picture or a painting. So there we go. And we're now going to use these in our sentences. But first, some conditional tense practice. So like I said, we are going to do some conditional tense writing at the end of this video today to talk about our ideal house, what it would be like. So we're just going to do a quick recap of the most important conditional tense rules that we need to know at GCSE. And the good news is it's pretty easy. I would say it's easier than the past tense we looked at last week. The most important conjugations you need are for I and he, she, or it. And the good news is that actually it's the same. Anything else is a bonus, but if you can use what we're going to talk about now correctly, then you will go far at GCSE. So, first of all, the conditional tense in English always uses the word would or could or should, but we'll focus mostly on would. So something you would like to do. It's not something that is reality, it is a hypothetical situation. And in Spanish, a verb in the conditional tense will always contain the letters RIA. Now, those may be the last 3 letters in the verb, or they may be just towards the end. It depends on who or what the verb is conjugated for, but you will always see the presence of RIA in the conditional tense in Spanish. The RIA represents the word would in English. So this is often a common misconception that there is a word for would in Spanish. There is not. There is no separate word for would. When you see RIA in a verb, that is that is the Spanish equivalent of our would in English. And to form the conditional tense, it's super easy. For I or he, she, or it, it's exactly the same. You add the letters IA to the infinitive. And because it's adding to the infinitive, for example, vivir is to live, viviría is I would live, we get the R from the infinitive. So even though I'm only adding the letters IA, the R is already there because it's in the infinitive. So that's where our 3 letters RIA comes from. And another example, ser means to be, sería, I would be, or it would be. And viviría could also be he or she would live. For the most part, we want to talk about ourselves with verbs, but occasionally things like sería, it would be, is much more common than I would be when we're writing in the conditional tense. There are some key irregular verbs, and they're irregular because you do not add the ending to the infinitive. You have to change the stem, so the bit that the ending is added to. And the most important ones that we need to know that we will use today, tendría is it would have or I would have. Habría, there would be, so that is the conditional tense of I. And haría, I would do or it would do. Okay, so those, we're going to stick with those as being the most important ones for today. So yeah, pause this if you need to make some notes or if you want to look over it a little bit more. Otherwise, we're going to move on to our pair transitions. So as always, I will first give you a sentence in Spanish that you need to translate into English before the answer comes on the screen. And then once we've seen the answer, we'll do a very similar sentence that you have to translate from English to Spanish to really help it stick. And today, each sentence will contain a verb from the conditional tense. And there are 5 pairs in total that will then help us in the final model answer task. Okay, and remember that the Spanish of the first sentence will disappear from the screen before you have to do the English to Spanish translation for question 2. So just stay super focused. Question 1. En el futuro, si pudiera, me gustaría vivir en una casa adosada. And that is, in the future, if I could, I would like to live in a terraced house. Okay, and this si pudiera is a really useful, important phrase to use in the conditional tense. It means if I could, and it is a fancy tense called the imperfect subjunctive. So if you use it accurately, it looks really good. So now, the next sentence. In the future, if I could, I would like to live in an apartment. And that is, en el futuro, si pudiera, me gustaría vivir en un apartamento. It's very, very important that after me gustaría, we have an infinitive verb. Okay, questions 3 and 4. Mi casa ideal tendría un jardín enorme. My ideal house would have an enormous garden. My ideal house would have an enormous kitchen. Mi casa ideal tendría una cocina enorme. Okay, 5 and 6. En mi casa ideal habría 6 dormitorios. In my ideal house, there would be 6 bedrooms. In my ideal house, there would be 5 bathrooms. En mi casa ideal habría 5 cuartos de baño. So note how this pluralizes. The S goes on the end of cuarto, not baños. So it's not cuarto de baños. It's cuartos because cuarto means room, the room of the bath. So we would say the rooms of the bath, not room of the baths. Okay, 7. En mi casa ideal, los muebles serían modernos. In my ideal house, the furniture would be modern. So here, serían, so we've got the RIA, but we add an N on the end because it's los muebles, so it's plural. And in Spanish, a verb that is conjugated for a third person plural subject will always end in N. Regardless of the tense, the last letter will always be an N. So if you see a verb that ends in N, then you know it's conjugated for they. In my ideal house, the chairs would be comfortable. En mi casa ideal, las sillas serían cómodas. And again, we need the N because I'm talking about las sillas, and also check your adjectival agreement. And finally, 9 and 10. Mi casa ideal sería tan grande como el Palacio Real de Madrid. My ideal house would be as big as the Royal Palace in Madrid. So comparison is always a really nice way to add complexity to your work. Tan plus adjective plus como is how we say as something as. And this time it's only sería because I'm only talking about one thing. It, not they. And 10, my ideal house would be as beautiful as Madrid's Royal Palace. Mi casa ideal sería tan bonita como el Palacio Real de Madrid. And bonita because it's mi casa. Okay, so the pair sentences are out of the way, and now, like I have done in the previous couple of weeks, I'm going to teach you a really easy way to answer any question that asks you to talk in the conditional tense in a writing or speaking exam. So today, we're answering the question, ¿Cómo sería tu casa ideal? Literally, how would it be your ideal house? ¿Cómo sería? What would it be like? So what would your ideal house be like? The 4 steps are on the screen, and I'm going to show you an example sentence for each point in English that you should try to translate into Spanish. And I recommend writing this down if possible. If there's a word you don't know, leave that bit blank. Do all the bits you do know. And remember that resilience is one of the most, if not the most important exam technique. And we'll go through it point by point. So let's get started. First one. If I could, I would like to live in a terraced house in London. My ideal house would have 6 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, and an enormous kitchen. So pause the video and write down your translation of that short paragraph. Okay, so this is what we should have. Si pudiera, me gustaría vivir, remember infinitive, en una casa adosada en Londres. People often write London, and Londres is one city name that does change in Spanish, so try and remember that. Mi casa ideal tendría 6 dormitorios, 5 cuartos de baño, remember how we pluralize this, y una cocina enorme. Okay, so we've got, this is really nice because we've got imperfect subjunctive with the si, we've got conditional tense times 2, one of those being an irregular verb, and lots of nice vocabulary. Then, next step, we give a reason. I would say that I would like it a lot because it would be very luxurious. So again, pause the video and translate. Okay, so we should have creo que, or you could say diría que, me gustaría mucho porque sería muy lujoso. Okay, so quite straightforward there. Me gustaría and sería should be like the 2 most used conditional tense verbs in your vocabulary. They are the really straightforward ones to use, and anytime you see conditional tense, they should be coming to mind straight away. Next step, use an idiom. And what I mean by idiom is a phrase that cannot be literally translated in another language and make sense. And so I'm going to give you another example of that now. So if I could live in that house, apologies for the typo, if I could live in that house, I think I would have a great time. So the idiom here is the I would have a great time. You may have heard of it before. The verb is pasarlo bomba. So see how you get on with putting that in the conditional tense. Pause the video and translate. Okay, so we should have, si pudiera vivir en esa casa, that house, creo que lo pasaría bomba. I would have a good time, great time. It's a really nice Spanish phrase. I would just learn that as a set phrase rather than necessarily worrying about how you form it from scratch, how you conjugate it. Lo pasaría bomba, I would have a great time. And the last step, the best thing would be that my ideal house would have a garden where I would relax on the weekends. Okay, so we saw the verb, to relax last week. This is a bit of a challenge here. We saw how we conjugate reflexive verbs in different tenses. So see how you get on with saying I would relax. Pause the video and translate. Okay, so we should have, Lo mejor sería que, so this phrase is really easy because lo mejor es que changes to lo mejor fue que in the past and changes to lo mejor sería que in the conditional. Mi casa ideal tendría un jardín, so we're repeating tendría from above, donde me relajaría los fines de semana. So me relajaría is how you would say I would relax. Remember, we take the reflexive pronoun, we change it to I, so me, we put it before the verb, and then we conjugate the verb as normal, and that involves adding ia to the infinitive. And also note the pluralized form of fin de semana. I have a lot of students who get confused, and when they see los fines de semana, that's just the plural of el fin. So there we go. That is our model answer for the conditional tense and the key steps that you can use, 4-step process to writing in the conditional tense at any point. Okay, so now you've got the vocab to describe your house in Spanish, your ideal house, but why stop there? Let's see if we can bring it to life. So I'm going to show you how to use Magic Studio to generate an AI image of your dream house exactly how you've just described it in Spanish. You're going to start manifesting now so that by the time you're done with school, you are well on your way to making that life for yourself that you really want. You could just type this in at the top. If you type magicstudio.com into your browser, and then just in here you type what you would like. So let's say we can just type in Spanish and it will recognize it. So mi casa ideal sería enorme. Tendría 6 después dormitorios, 5 y una cocina enorme. So I'm not sure what it's going to do with this, but let's see what happens. Okay, so I've got my enormous kitchen here. It's maybe not quite what I want, so we could go for something different. Mi casa ideal sería una casa adosada en Londres. Tendría un jardín grande con una piscina. Let's see what happens here. Okay, so this looks a bit more like it, although maybe it's not a casa adosada, but I've got my enormous garden with a swimming pool. It definitely looks like I'm in England somewhere. So you can play around with this if you want, just why not? It's a bit of fun. It can always helpful to have a clear image of what you want. You can also use it to say, okay, well actually this isn't very good because it doesn't listen to all of my Spanish. You could do this with your friends and then pick apart their descriptions versus pictures to see actually is this picture what they asked for, etc. There's loads of things you can do with this, but sometimes it's just fun to imagine that you actually live in one of these houses. And now it's your turn. So write your own paragraph to the question, ¿Cómo sería tu casa ideal? Using the 4-point structure and today's vocabulary. Drop your sentences in the comments, and of course I will give you feedback as always. Well, if those images of your potential future house don't motivate you to work hard for your Spanish GCSE, I don't know what will. Try it out for yourself and let me know in the comments, in Spanish of course, what your ideal house would look like. And don't forget, if you want the links to this week's vocab quiz and Quizlet set, they are in the description. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends. I'll see you next week. Nos vemos la próxima semana.